Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Jody Lynn, as you know, we subtitle every show Your Daily Dose of Happy. I think we're going to hit that in spades today because our guest is completely and totally about the life of abundance and the life of learning. We just learned that in a few minutes just talking to him before we get started on the show here. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. First of all, how are you doing? We haven't talked in a week. How's it going?
I'm great. We're experiencing a little bit of a snowstorm and a cold snap up here in Canada. But it's warm indoors.
That's right. That's what indoors was created for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good stuff. All right. So let's bring our guest into the picture here. His name is Rand Selig. He is the author of the book Thriving, with this wonderful subtitle about happiness and healthiness and so forth. But he was telling us before we got started, Jody Lynn, that this book is like taking off like a jet plane, right?
Love it.
We got to learn more about that. So Rand, first of all, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much, Walt and Jody Lynn, for having me on as your guest. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So tell us about this book. I mean, first of all, how did you get to fly? And second of all, congratulations.
Well, it is my first book. Everybody says that when you've done that hard work of writing a book, you might keep going. I think the next step for me is actually to make it into an audio book, which will come up maybe later this spring. Interesting. A lot of people prefer to listen to a book because they're in the car, they have their ear pods or whatever they have. Are
you going to be recording it yourself? I mean, I always thought it's best if the author is reading the book, but I didn't know what your take was on that.
Well, that's certainly my strong inclination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And tell us more about the book.
Well, the book has, if I'm in the really short elevator, it's all about embracing our power to make choices in life, choices of every kind, whether it's who we're spending time with or what we're working on, and even how we feel. Feelings are a choice. Sometimes they come up very fast and they're sometimes bundled up with a bunch of other emotions. But at the end of the day, there's choice around that. So embracing our choice, our power to make choices, I believe I have, and I believe other people can too, design their own lives. And they're very interconnected, this power to choose. And then the third is, and it's very related to this design your own life, is the concept that we can be the author of our own story. So it's a little bit different than being the designer, because being an author means that you can edit. It means that you can rewrite, and you can really pick and choose what your history is all about, what's important to think for yourself and to share with others. And then you can craft many scenarios for the future. And then once you craft them, maybe they can become a reality.
Jody Lynn, before we got started, Rand told us that he wasn't really familiar with the law of attraction. I think the only thing that's missing is the term. He already is familiar with the law of attraction.
Thank you.
I mean, seriously, you're basically expressing, the only thing that's missing is the definition of the term. Beyond that, you got everything down pat.
That's right.
Cool.
You're living it.
Good. Well, it's something that doesn't necessarily happen easily. So a lot of people say, did you write this book? Were you always thriving? Did you have to overcome obstacles? And I have to say, absolutely, yes, I did. I started off being a pretty happy person. I've always had friends. So it wasn't as if my challenges were overwhelming, but they were significant and I had to overcome them. So thriving is something that's about habits. It's about choices. So I've taken a deep look at that over a long period of time. And this book is really a culmination of a lot of those thoughts and a lot of the experiences I've had in life as a running my own company, as a Scoutmaster, as a Little League coach, sitting on boards, you name it. It's informed a lot of the choices and a lot of perspective I have.
Well, we have so many different directions we can go on this, because as Jody Lynn and I know from having talked about this for so many different ways, so many different guests, so many different conversations. I mean, it's endless how many different ways this applies to life. So I'm just going to go to one of my favorites, which is to pick up tips and tricks and hacks and so forth. So share a couple of hacks with us.
Well, let me start with one which I think is a big issue for a lot of folks, which is about money.
Okay.
And I talk about the notion that we can figure out what enough is. Now, I'm speaking to folks of every kind, including people who have done very well, and now they don't really have to worry about a budget anymore. But the issue boils down to, where are you looking? If you're looking inside and you can figure out what's important to you, then enoughness is within reach. You can figure that out. If you're looking at your neighbors, if you're looking at a coworker, you're hearing somebody talk about some amazing trip they took, that's harder. That's harder to come up with a sense of what enough really means.
It's never enough. You can just keep pointing and get, even less than enough, even less. Like, there's so many different examples in our world of different things you can do, and a lot of ways that you can find that you fall short in comparison to those other people.
Well, that's the key, Jody Lynn, is this comparison. And I think it really has to be, if you're going to be really centered and a happy person, it's really about you looking inside and making that decision. And I think it looks at the question of, is to have more, to be more? And I think the answer for me, and maybe everybody I know, the answer is no. To have more is not to be more. There's a great line from the super duper Will Rogers, which I'd like to quickly read. Too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't like. Will Rogers.
My husband says that quote often.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah. And I'm glad he does. There's a really cool book I just have to shout out about. It's a book that the subtitle is The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. It's called Essentialism. And it talks not just about money, but also about the scarce resource of time. And Greg McCowan, the author, makes a super duper point in so many different ways about less often is more. And that really applies to our purchasing power and money.
I don't know if you knew this, Rand, but well, you probably picked it up from the introduction, but Jody Lynn is a money coach. And one of the things she talks about constantly is how when you're trying to focus on money, you're really focusing on the wrong thing. You want to be focusing on what's inside. And here you are saying the exact same thing. Right. So that's why I heard she's glowing over there. That's why she's so excited by what you're saying.
I love it.
I'm glad that she isn't talking about a totally different thing that I'm talking about. There's another book that is so great. I don't know if Jody Lynn, you've come across it, but it's a book that originally came out, two authors, Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. Joe's passed away, so it's been revised a little bit, but it's Your Money or Your Life.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Treat Yourself. It's a great book, and it really goes into the huge amount of effort it takes to, make money and to get promoted, and without really looking at why you're doing it.
Mhm.
And life has shifted in some, I think, really nice ways for people who have desk jobs. They don't have to go into the office anymore. They don't have to, spend a lot of money on parking and transportation and clothing and stuff like that. You do have some, but maybe not as much as is back in the day when everybody was, being a child to the corporate parent. So I think you'll like that book.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I love this discussion.
Do you want to take the next step with the questioning here, Jody Lynn? Because like I said, I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse. So that's why I'm thinking, I almost need to take a step back.
Oh, I want to go back to what you were just talking about with I can't remember not the last book that you referenced, but the one right before that, and money and time resources. I want to hear more of an explanation about that, what that was talking about.
Yeah, that was the book Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less. And it's a powerful book because even though it's the same point made in 15 chapters, each one talks about a different version, different aspect of life. So I do a lot of work in strategy and have for many decades. And I thought, well, I'll just skip that chapter. But I said, well, no, let me read that one. My eyes opened up again. Whether you're talking about relationships or time or money, strategy is like that too. If you're trying to say, here's our big strategy, and there's 7 things on it, well, the chances of you actually accomplishing all 7 is going to be compromised. If you really, really take the hard look to say what's really important to us, really super important, then you can really focus on that, and your chance of then accomplishing that is far greater. It's an old line. I think it came from when Secretary George, Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State, and he said, well, write the memo, and then the memo would come in and be 50 pages long, and he says, I'm not going to read 50 pages, rewrite it. And it got shorter. Now it was 20 pages. And then again, it was 10 pages. He says, get this to be 1 page. Well, writing a 1-page thing that's really good is much harder than writing a 50-page thing. Mm-hmm. Same point about focus. Less is more.
I love that.
Not only is less more, but it's also, like you said, it's hard to do because it requires a great deal of focus. But when you when you really focus, it becomes easy because that's the only way to make it 1 page is to make it simple.
That's right. They're reinforcing in very important ways. And, if it's 1 page, you might actually get it.
How about that? Wouldn't that be nice?
So
and it might actually be read too.
Well, yeah, exactly. I want to know, Rand, what was your turning point, or was there like a definitive turning point for you that, sparked this journey of less is more and, from thriving instead of just surviving?
Well, I grew up in a middle-class family. My dad was in the Army, had a fabulous 25-year career, fought in World War II and Korea and Vietnam, very highly decorated, but in some ways very principle-centered, very service-oriented. My mom, brilliant bacteriologist and a social worker. So I grew up, we did fine, but there wasn't super amount of abundance. We weren't taking giant trips. We weren't buying a new car every 3 years or whatever. We lived modestly, but we lived comfortably. So I grew up with that. And I went to business school at Stanford, and then went to Wall Street in corporate finance. Ooh. And I saw a lot of folks who were making a lot of money who were not very happy. Mm-mm. And many of them, if they had a compass, it was an amoral compass.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't suit me at all. It wasn't, I would say, a giant surprise, but it just reinforced the sense of who I was and what I was about. And that reminder and the commitment to being of service, of being excellent in everything I can do in terms of relationships and uh, uh, getting on with projects that come my way has really led to this life I'm living and the choices I've made all along the way. I've assembled a life that supports those concepts.
Was there a crisis point at some point along the line that really drove you forward with this?
Well, I have to say there were two things. I talk about it in my book. One was that I have an autoimmune disease which affects my eyes. Now, I'm working super duper hard. This came in my late 20s. I'm doing, swashbuckling, as my kids like to say. I'm closing deals. I'm running around. And it was all stress related. Doctors won't say that, but I know my body, and it was very stress related. Well, no, I was not a Superman anymore. I had limits, and that humility that set in was really important for me to embrace. Fortunately, I had good doctors. I had the phenomenal support of my wife, so that I could get through that and not let go entirely of doing great work. The second, I won't say crisis, but required me to look deeply was about my father. So I've sort of described him. A terrific person, unbelievable what he's done for other people. But there are a lot of elements to who he is and how he has traveled. He's still alive. He's turning 102 in May.
Wow, that's great.
He's a toughie. He's very stubborn. And in some ways, it was kind of as I became more mature in my 30s and 40s, it became the old bull and the young bull. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I really had to say, is continue to fight with him and be upset with him really what I wanted to do? I could be right in my limited way of thinking about things, or I could abandon my position and just say the relationship with him is much more important. Mm-hmm. So I went to a friend who's a counselor, and I said, can I talk to you? And he says, oh, you want to talk about your dad, right? And I said, yes, thank you. And so I explained the latest round of problem. And he says, here's what I'd recommend. Write a letter. Don't mail it. I mean, you can if you want. But write a letter to the dad you wished you had, to the dad you deserve. Talk about a weekend you just spent together and how much fun it was and how many really cool things you talked about and how validated you felt. And I said, wow. This went through about 3 or 4 drafts before I, felt it was finished. The first were very accusatory, really nasty almost. And slowly, I abandoned that stuff and got on with appreciating him. And I held on to that. This was probably 15, 20 years ago when I went through this, and I've held on to that. So he's very narcissistic. That's okay. I just say, I'll listen to his stories. He won't ask me how I'm doing. He won't be particularly interested in that. That's okay. I have other people, friends, etc. I can share those goodies with. He's special, and I'm his only son, and I'm proud of him. I respect him, and that's where that relationship is.
Was this a case of the Kissinger memo where you had to keep revising until you got it down to 1 page?
It was short. It was a letter. But I think the revision wasn't so much the shortening. It was evolving myself internally, so that I could make that shift that I'm talking about, away from me being disappointed to me being appreciative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that appreciation theme. We actually haven't talked about appreciation a lot lately, but we have over the years talked about it a great deal. And boy, oh boy, that whole concept of appreciation is underexplored and incredibly powerful. And every time that it comes up, I find new ways of appreciating how powerful appreciation is. It's just a remarkable thing.
I'm glad you said that. Appreciation and gratitude, being grateful, is one of the cornerstones, one of the absolute cornerstones for getting on with an abundant life. And if your listeners are struggling, I'll tell them this: the struggle ends when gratitude begins.
Hmm.
Look at that smile on Jody Lynn's face. I mean, wow, that says it all.
I just got a hug from her.
That's right.
You bet you did. I think it's true. I think that, there's that adage that fear stops when faith begins. It's exactly what you just said in just different words. And I love that the journey that you've taken with your father. I see a lot of similarities in my life reflected in yours and the path that you've walked, including the parent struggle. When you have this deep perspective on something, whether it's a parent or it's your situation with money or where your life is at or what you have or whatever it is, when you're so stuck in that perspective, you'll find all the reasons that that's true. Like all the evidence will present itself over and over and over again. And, you build these legs on this table to support your theory that, they suck or my life is shit or whatever it is. And it takes some time and some massaging to step away from that. And I think too many people get stuck in this quick fix of, oh, I'm just going to be grateful and then everything will change, but they can't get to that true resonant frequency of being grateful, that deep resonance of it's okay that they have this problem or that, or they've done this or that. It's not, it's not letting them off the hook for those things, but it's appreciating them even so. And that takes courage. And I love hearing that story, Rand.
Well, back to my book for a moment. There are 4 pillars to thriving, and one huge pillar is thriving personally. That's actually half my book because it's so incredibly foundational.
Wow.
And one of the 8 chapters is on gratitude, just on gratitude. And Walt, to include your point, that of course includes appreciation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, appreciation and gratitude are so close that it would be almost impossible to have one without the other, I think.
Not even sure I could explain very well what the difference would be, but yeah. Yeah.
If I were to think about it, I guess the one difference in my mind, and this is a subjective thing, but the one difference in my mind is just in the way the terms are usually defined in society. Gratitude usually has a little bit more personal baggage attached to it, whereas appreciation tends to be a little bit cleaner from that personal baggage. But other than that, they're so close that they might as well be in the same part of the dictionary. I mean, it doesn't matter that one begins with A, the other begins with G. They're basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've given me something to investigate a little bit more.
Okay.
We live in a world where it's easy to be a little sloppy around language when what you really mean is one thing, but you use another. And I'll give you a great example of that: leadership and management. Those 2 words, the terms, the concepts, are usually used interchangeably, and so often say, "Oh, great leader." Well, when you look at really what they're talking about management tasks, not leadership tasks. Fundamental difference, very easy, is leaders do the right things and managers do them right. Or as Stephen Covey said, managers are dealing with the operational efficiency of climbing the ladder to reach a goal. Leaders make sure the ladder's on the right wall.
Mm,
Yeah, I like
I
that.
like
That's
that.
good. Yeah.
So it's important. It's important because if you're confused about the difference of what it takes to be a great leader, which includes things like creating vision and articulating vision, creating culture, and the manager is the one who carries things out, who creates alignment, who creates teamwork, who gives feedback, who adjusts the goals. They're really they need each other, but they are different. And if you
Oh, yeah.
focus on that and you say, well, look, I'm really, in my case, started in high school. I was a great leader. I was editor-in-chief of the yearbook. Man, my leadership with vision about what we were going to do for the first time ever and so on, fantastic. But my management, oh boy, no. I started with 8 section editors. I knew these fellows well. It was an all-male school. We wore our ties every day. I knew they'd do a great job, and they did. But in the process of meeting our deadlines and doing various things, I was probably pretty abusive. And by the end of the year, they were not friends anymore. It was a wake-up call for me. And it led to a kind of lifelong pursuit to continue to be a great leader, continue to hone that, but really double down and figure out what it would take for me to be a good manager. So I'm good. I won't say I'm really as fantastic as I am as a leader, but I am so much better, especially on the people side, as opposed to just managing process.
I understand that people do get confused about this, the comparison between leadership and management. I also think, just from my own experience, the two couldn't be further apart.
Yeah.
They're like two different universes from the way I look at it. Because to me, management is dealing with day-to-day stuff. You don't have to be a leader in order to manage. You're just dealing with stuff constantly. I got to deal with this situation, got to deal with that. You're dealing. Whereas, like you were saying, the leader is the one who has the vision, and he scopes things out and says, okay, this is where we're heading. And it's great if you can combine the two together, but they almost never combine.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's rare to see somebody, and I'll hold on to I'll come back to an exception to this, but it's rare to see somebody who's really both an excellent leader and an excellent manager. It's I don't know if it really does exist, frankly.
I'm not sure if it does.
Yeah, the one.
Well, maybe it does exist one way. Maybe it exists when you're playing the role at different times. But being the leader while you're being the manager, that would be really confusing.
Oh, I like that point. Well, I would say the one carve out I'd make, and it doesn't deny what I just said, but it is an important element, is that we personally can both exhibit leadership in our personal lives, who we are, what our vision for ourselves is, as well as a lot of stuff about managing our affairs. Managing our lives so they're running well, and those two have to be laminated. I mean, if you have great goals, you have a big vision, and your ability to carry it out and handle stuff is negligible or reduced, what is the point of the vision? So those two need to be combined, and it's going to be combined into one person. You.
Jody Lynn, how do you see the distinction there?
Oh, I think I view it very similarly, like how there's this separation when I see the two words, like leader feels like the one that has that bird's eye view. And then, like you said, the manager is the one that is executing the day-to-day to keep on track with that vision. And so that's kind of how I see the split. And I also think that in the moment, like acting as both of those two is very difficult because they can be on two different spectrums. Like, what is the bird's eye view? Like, I find I naturally gravitate more to the bird's eye view, and all the little details when you get into them, I'm like bunged up, like God, you're just throwing me in the mud. Let's just go. Like, it doesn't matter. Let's just go. And I think those are kind of the differences between the two that I see.
Well, it's again another chapter in this book. It's not in that first section when I was talking about thriving personally. It's about thriving together, which is section 2 of my book. The 2 chapters there are relationships with others and leadership and management, and it goes into a lot of depth in both cases, in both those chapters, about what's entailed. It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about management a lot in quite some time here, but now that you've got the juices flowing inside of me, I am thinking about it, and one of the ideas that just keeps coming back to me over and over again is that management can actually have 2 different flavors to it. You kind of alluded to one of them, Rand, when you talked about yourself not being really strong as a manager, particularly when you were heading the yearbook there. Mm-hmm. And how the way I would express that is there are some managers who learn how to manage in a kind way, and there are other managers who don't. They just manage.
More authoritarian.
Yeah, they just yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about that. If you break down what are some of the components of management, you think, well, okay, so I've got the big thing I'm supposed to do. The leader, the CEO, whoever it was, boss woman said, do this. And now the manager says, okay, I got to plan the work. I got to chunk it up. I got to set some deadlines. I got to assign some people to the various tasks. So I got to organize the team. You're going to monitor in some way. Again, this has to do with your own management style, but you're going to be, monitoring that the work goes along and adjusting as you go. Maybe somebody needs to be added to a team, or somebody is redundant or creating a little bit of an issue, needs to be moved to a different task. So those are some of the details. And again, on a personal level, we do all those things ourselves. We kind of, we don't call it out that way. Oh, I'm managing myself. But we are because we want to get stuff done.
We do want to get stuff done. We also want to do so in a way that feels good. I think that's where the kindness question comes into it, because different people feel differently about their own management styles. If you feel comfortable within yourself, I mean, I think management actually reflects how you feel about yourself. If you're feeling good about yourself, your management is going to have a good, what I would call a good style, a kind style. It's going to have a style that relates with other people. If you don't feel good within yourself, your style is going to be diametrically the opposite.
It's really true. And I think if you have the reservoirs, you're doing better, then you can take more setbacks. You can come to the office on a Monday morning having had a difficult weekend with whatever caused the difficult weekend. And so these play into it. I mean, we don't just go do management stuff in the absence of being a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if you try to do that, that's where you become the monster.
Yeah. Well, I recently put a post in on LinkedIn. It was on Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is a great day for if you have a romantic relationship, and you're all excited about getting together and saying some sweet things. But it's also a very lonely and a sad day for people who are not in that kind of relationship. And that's the messages that our society wants us to hang on to, being in love and falling in love and falling out of love and one and only and all those kinds of things. And we sort of hold love in a sort of private way, maybe in the family. And it's what I wrote about was that love can be a way of being. Love is a way of being. which makes it a social good, which
Ooh.
so these managers can go into the office with the love, which means being respectful, which means being kind, which means helping, which means listening and listening harder. These are things that reflect, I think, being love, just going through life from that vantage point of being that kind of person.
Yeah.
The word that keeps going through my mind as you're saying all that is the word relationship. Because we have relationships with ourselves. In a work context, we have relationship with our fellow employees. If we're managers, we have relationship with those who are working underneath us. If we're leaders, we have relationships with everybody who's on the team. If we're just worker bees, we have relationships with the people that we're working for, as well as the co-workers. But we also have relationships with customer bases and with computers and with offices and with just about everything that goes on in our lives. Relationships are everywhere. And the way those relationships function, once again, that comes back to that same basic concept. The way those relationships function are a direct correlation to how we are relating within ourselves. So if I'm relating with myself in a way that works well, that everything is lubricated and working nicely, all those outside relationships are going to work well. And that's actually, this is a basic law of attraction concept, really. The idea that if I'm in, we call it being in a high vibrational space. If you're in that high vibrational space, you're really good, feel good space, everything starts working well. Computers start working well. Everything functions. And then when you get into a low space, a space that doesn't feel good, computers start to fail. Relationships start to fail. Things don't work out the way. It's a direct correlation. How you're feeling inside plays out outside. That's basic LOA right there.
LOA, I thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. I like it. And again, no surprise, I'm in alignment with it. This relationship, that having deep and enduring relationships, both at the, for yourself, with yourself, and also with others, is an enormous element to our lives. Who's living off at the mountaintop or on an island by themselves? What kind of life is that anyway? So on the self, on the self side, I would just say a couple of things that I think are might be valuable. One is the notion of just giving up being perfect. Give yourself a break. Learn from your mistakes, admit the mistake, but then learn some lessons from them. It's really important to take care of yourself, self-renewal, however you do that. And that, again, that's not a mystery. I think there's some things about renewal that are really important. One that I advocate very strongly is don't work 7 days a week. Take time off. Yes, busy. I've been a very busy camper, but a happy camper, because I say, look, I'm going to stop. I'm going to take 1 day off. I'm not going to go shopping. I'm not going to be hanging around with my electronic gadgets. I'm going to be with friends. I'm going to be with family. I'm going to gobble up some yummy food. I'm going to dance around and listen to music, all that stuff. And then I come back, recharge, refresh, and that much more potent. And another ingredient, and we're living in an extroverted world. A lot of people are shocked when I tell them I'm an introvert, but I do test technically as an introvert because I need to recharge by myself quietly. I don't get charged up by being the social animal that I am. So having solitude, I do my best work, important thinking about what's going on. And again, the leadership part, by having solitude, by being alone, quietly. And for me, that works best in nature. So I would just inject, whenever possible, a little chance to be in nature. I had a book talk a couple of weeks ago, and somebody asked a great question. Said, when I go in nature and I'm taking a walk, is it okay if I listen to a book? With my, my answer was, well, of course it is. But I would suggest you don't do that all the time. And if you are walking, keep your eyes open. Your head is occupied. You're in a different place, but take out your listening device and look at that bug or that really amazing flower and just stop and smell and listen and just let it come into you. Don't just be in your head the whole time.
That's the difference between experiencing and appreciating.
Wow. I'm taking more notes, Walt.
That part we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
So that was pretty easy for me to draw on. Yeah, I'm loving that. That's really good. Do you have more questions, Sherry Lynn, or should I keep going?
Keep going. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, could I add before you throw your next
go ahead.
good goodie at me? I want to talk about relationships with others for a minute, because I think there's some really nuggets here that are important. Back again to what do we focus on? What's important? Whether it's the money thing or something else. Treasure your relationships, not your possessions. So I just love that line. You think about it, you say, well, what are you treasuring? That if you have a little box of a 2x2 matrix, and you talk about relationships, a high quality relationship, low quality relationship, and the outcomes, high and low, where they intersect in the high side is with collaboration. High relationship, high outcome means collaboration. So I had a personal experience about a dozen years ago. I said, man, my life is going so well. What could I do to make it even better? And I said, I need to have deeper relationships. I have a lot of people that I like and like me, and I would call friends, but the depth of the relationship isn't, I know it could be more. And so I cleverly said, let me pick 6 friends I've known a long time, and let me be vulnerable with them. They had not seen me as this vulnerable guy. And I said, look, it could be the case, I said to myself, it could be the case that the needle will not move in one or more of those relationships. Hopefully they will. I don't think it will destroy or hurt the relationship, but they may just say, wow, I didn't realize you were so messed up. But,
just sidebar. You know what? It's so interesting because we're always afraid when we're vulnerable with people and we really crack our heart open and show people who we really are on the inside, that they're going to reject us. But that's never been the case in any of my experiences, or really anybody that I truly know who is opened up and shown themselves to somebody in an appropriate setting, obviously, but one-on-one, bared their heart or their soul to somebody. I've never really heard of that rejection there. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there, question or a statement or whatever. It's so funny that we're so scared of that. And I don't think it happens that often because people resonate with it.
I think it has another benefit, that if you feel coldness, you don't feel rejection, but you just, you poured out your heart and the person says, oh, well, I'm sorry, and then changes the subject. That's a bit of a litmus test that this is not necessarily the relationship that's going to unfold in this deep way. And better to know that now than having made more investment.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I'll suggest that litmus test becomes the basis for deciding whether or not that is a close relationship.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Boy, the 3 of us, look at us.
Yeah.
Because
Sorry,
I know where I'm pretty sure I know where the problem comes in when people start saying, well, I'm afraid that it's going to ruin the relationship. It's because they're trying to apply it to relationships that aren't really their people.
Yeah.
And it comes back to yourself. What are your needs? What's going on that you're reaching out to this person where your radar is not really very effective, thinking that this, for whatever reason, this person I can share this stuff with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's a lot of tuning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know what happened with these 6 people, Rand.
Yeah, what did happen?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, happily, 5 out of 6 became much better friends. They began sharing stuff with me that I never heard about.
Cool.
I've known at the time, 10, 20 or more years. And all of a sudden, we're sharing stuff that really mattered. And all of a sudden, we were a resource for each other. We understood each other better. It was glorious. One, it didn't really move the needle. It didn't harm anything. And hey, 5 out of 6, pretty dang good.
That's a great percentage. Yeah, can't argue with that one. It also indicates you were very, very careful with your selection of who the 6 would be. You were selective.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it is true. It is true. I didn't just go knock on the neighbor's door.
Good move on your part. Yeah, it's important to know who your people are. And it's like, I love what you were talking about in terms of just putting down the tools and getting away for a bit.
Yeah.
When I think about how that applies in my own life, it's almost an essential, really, because it's not really a life unless you're doing exactly that.
Mm-hmm. There's a great song. I think it's by the Eagles. Don't let the wheels of your own mind drive you crazy.
Yeah.
I can't sing it effectively to really bring the point home, but the concept should be clear to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
We can't. We're living in a busy world, and busy is a 4-letter word. It's not necessarily a great word, and so you can kind of go crazy. I mean, not in a technical sense necessarily, hopefully, but yeah, get thrown off.
Well, I'm not so sure that it's all that technical, actually. I think you probably come up with an appropriate clinical term because you do kind of go crazy.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Stress. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a good segue for me, and I know you two have you're such pros at this, and you have your own next questions and so on. But this might be a good time for me to interject something that's really a big deal for me, and it's emotional health.
Ooh.
Emotional health, and emotional health is one of these things that if you are on top of it, you're aware of it, it's going to make a difference in how you deal with it. And there are a few things that I suggest when this topic comes up, in no particular order. One is you have to be able to forgive yourself and others, and maybe forgive people who aren't here anymore. This goes back to the mom and dad situation, or a teacher or a boss, something like that. So this is a practice, being forgiving. Another is to let go. So, having run my life, run my company very successfully, raised my terrific kids, control. If you asked me a few years ago and said, what's the secret to your success? I would say being in control. Well, all of a sudden then my kids are growing up and they're getting married and they're doing stuff that I would not have chosen for themselves. And I'm thinking, well, what's going on? And I had to do something which I just quickly call letting go. And that's not easy. I continue to work on that. In fact, there's a little exercise I like to do with folks. We can do it here. I don't think this is a video production, but if it is, people will see it. So hold up your fist.
Okay.
And you're holding on to something very tightly. You have not been able to let it go. You see the white knuckles.
I'm an expert at that.
You want to let it go. It's something that happened a long time ago, or maybe more recently. It may be something you did, maybe something somebody else did intentionally or not. And then turn your fist over and look, more white knuckles, And then you say, wait a minute. I've been going through this for a long time. I am powerful. And you know what? I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to let it go. So then you open your hand slowly, slowly, your fingers wiggle, your thumb, and your hand kind of rises because you're so much lighter, maybe relieved. So letting go is another element to emotional health, very important.
That's a very clever idea that you came up with there, because what you did is you found a way to physically let go of something that's emotional.
Yes. And, you know, from time to time, it doesn't happen very often, but I'll catch myself saying, wow, you know, I'm not letting go of this thing. And I do the exercise and it helps me. It just reminds me, it puts me in this place of, well, you know, dude, you're holding on. You are powerful. Get with it. Let go.
I remember one of the things that I would talk about quite a bit, because letting go is a topic that we talked about a lot here on the show, particularly for a number of years, mainly because we talk about stuff that I need to talk about. And I certainly needed to talk about that one. I remember one of the earliest comments that I made was, let go. I don't even know what I'm letting go of. Was I holding a steering wheel all this time and I wasn't even aware of it? I mean, that was one of the biggest frustrations, was I was dealing with this concept of letting go of something. I didn't know how to let go of it. So when you describe it as a physical process where you're physically just letting go of something, I mean, if I had heard that back then, I think I would have gotten the concept a lot faster.
It's a powerful visual.
It is. Yeah. A physical, not just a visual, it's a physical process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You feel
let me throw out one more. I mean, there's more, but there's one more that I think is huge. And this is the idea of self-sabotaging. I mean, it's just amazing how people don't even get into the game. They don't give themselves a chance. They don't apply. They don't follow up because, oh, that person's not going to like me. Shooting themselves in the foot. Very, very, very painful, bad idea. If you catch yourself shooting yourself in the foot, give it up. Don't do it. Don't do it. Give it a try. Instead of shooting yourself in the foot, take the best step forward.
One of the things I've noticed about that concept, shooting yourself in the foot as you're describing it, is that the shooter often isn't aware that they're doing it. They may feel the pain, but they're in some way disconnected from the fact that they're the one doing the shooting.
That's lovely. That's a lovely point. And so the idea of figuring out what's going on sometimes is something you can do on your own, you know, with the solitude and the honesty and the courage. But sometimes you need feedback. You need somebody to say, hey, dude, I love you, but I keep seeing this thing you do that isn't helpful to you, or I find irritating, or something. Feedback, very special. And again, you have to have the kind of relationship that allows for that. You're not going to bite the person's head off and say, well, we're done with being friends because you told me the truth.
That's happened, by the way.
Yeah. I think it's also amazing to be able to have that relationship with yourself, to have that honest feedback loop with yourself, to start being conscious of, like, I know I'm doing this, and be able to walk yourself through those moments also. Like, there's always going to be blind spots, things that we're so, you know, unconscious to or unaware of. But I think that this is something that we should teach people more often, is how to have these conversations with ourselves, how to even talk to yourself, how to even figure out what you're feeling. Because most people, you know, it's not until, I don't know, when they're older in life or they're aged, that they start to learn, oh, I need this skill of teaching myself or talking to myself, or, you know, I call it being my own best friend. And I think it's so valuable.
Well, you may have come across, your listeners may have come across Brene Brown and her amazing podcast, or it's TED Talk, I guess, about being wholehearted. And she says there are these people who just own their flaws, and and this was a healing, and all of a sudden they're transformed. They're no longer this person who's afraid to get out there because they know they have this defect or this flaw or this self-assessed flaw. and getting on with that. Being wholehearted then means that you can go out in the world and have these relationships with more honesty, more vulnerability, more integrity. It's great. It's great stuff. She's amazing.
She's really good. Her stuff is definitely worth listening to and learning from. Yeah, no doubt about that. The whole concept of shooting yourself in the foot, of being open to the self-sabotage. I think that's the term you use to describe it. That's self-sabotage. It's a challenging journey, especially the first few steps when you're taking it. I can recall numerous times where I would think to myself, I would have a breakthrough moment, like, oh, I get it. This is how I've been self-sabotaging. And the instant response that came from me was, oh, I just checkmated myself again, didn't I? Ah. And I'd play that out over and over and over again until finally I said, okay, so I checkmate myself occasionally. Big deal. But early on, it was a big deal. Like, how could I have checkmated myself? I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
And then over time, you learn to accept it. Like, okay, well, I guess that's part of me being a human being.
Well, I think the thing for people who are moving forward well in life is that they say, okay, one, I see a pattern. So, and I don't think that pattern's serving me. So I'm gonna work on it. And I don't know how long it'll take. I don't even know if I'll be completely finished getting rid of that bad pattern, but I'm gonna give it a whirl because I'm committed to, evolving. That's a great purpose in life, is just become this, in that way, evolve and become a better person, maybe the best person you can be.
Well, as so often happens, this conversation has evolved into using up an hour, and all of a sudden the hour is gone, which is amazing because it always flies right past. But there are a couple things that we want to touch on before we part company for the day. First and foremost, the book. Once again, tell us about what the name of the book is. Where do you find the book? What's it all about here?
Yeah. So again, the title of my book is Thriving with an exclamation mark. How to create a healthier, happier, and more prosperous life. It's available at Amazon and all the independent bookstores, Barnes and Noble, and so on. It's at Amazon. It's available on all formats. Ebook, paperback, and hardcover. At the independents, just in paperback, at least at this point. I'm really hoping that I'm all about engaging on this topic, and my goal is to inspire and encourage people to unleash this power to make these choices in every aspect of our lives that'll allow us to thrive. Who doesn't want enhanced vitality? To have a greater sense of purpose and meaning. We haven't talked about that today. Have to invite me back on.
Yeah.
And
That's
to
the problem with
reach
this topic. It
potential.
goes so many different directions. I mean, you can't cover them all. It's not possible.
My book ends. I have a lot of quotes in my book. You could probably tell from our conversation. I just love quotes. I've been collecting them since high school, and a lot of people said, "Wow, I love your quotes, and I love where you place them. They just make the point you're working on so clear." And the last quote in the book is the one and only for me, and maybe I can just leave with that. And it's really two questions. The first question is, could this coming year be the best year of your life thus far? And then, after you settle with that for a minute, that's a choice. There's some choice around that. Then ask yourself, what would it take for that to be so?
Sure. Yeah, I love that. For someone who does want to reach out, how do they reach you? How do they find you?
So you can go to my book website, Rand Selig, RandSelig.com, or LinkedIn.
Okay. And it sounds like you want to hear from people. So anyone who's listening and has an inclination, follow through on that inclination. We'll provide a link in the show notes too to make it easy to find the website. But follow through on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions people may have. There's a contact page on the website where you can contact me with a hello, how are you? Thanks, or I didn't agree with that, or I have a question. And also you can book me for a talk. A book talk. I'm doing talks all around, including remote. I'm doing some Zoom stuff from book groups in the Midwest and so on and so forth. And I'm excited to do that because I think the set of messages that my book embraces are really important messages to just embrace this life of abundance.
I love that. That's beautiful. The other thing that I like to do, and this has been a practice for a couple of years now, I noticed that when a guest like you, because you're a giver, that's why you come onto a program like this to keep giving, to help other people and so forth. And givers all are, we're content creators essentially. I mean, you come onto a podcast, you maybe write blog posts or social media or stuff like that. I mean, there are a number of different ways that you put stuff out. You put stuff out through your book as well, and people consume it. People, I mean, we're living in the 21st century, and it's the information age, and the information's being consumed all over the place by people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, and you never hear about that, and you never get credit for that. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, time to give some credit for that. So on behalf of those people you've never met, you never seen, never will meet, never will see, thank you for what you're doing, because it's making a difference in other people's lives.
Thanks for saying that. Well, to a lot of people who know me say, "Oh, you must be so happy with what's going on, all these reviews and all these book sales and so on," and say, well, thank you, yes, but the fundamental thing is I'm reaching people and it's making a difference to them. I mean, I read these reviews. I got this really amazing review recently. This guy says, Rand's book is for everyone, whether you're 6 or 96. I'm a professional golfer and it improved my golf game.
Whoa.
Which stunned me. He said, I used to reach in for a club out of my golf bag out of fear and anxiety. Wow. And after reading this book, now I'm reaching to the club in a very different way. My golf game has improved a lot. And I can't wait to figure out how else this book's going to help me in my life.
Whoa. Yeah, that is a cool review.
It was very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those instances when you do get the feedback. You do know how you've influenced somebody else's life. Yeah.
Which is why reviews are important. A lot of people say, well, look, you got all these reviews already. Why do I have to weigh in anymore? It doesn't need it. But in fact, it does. Other people can read it. If you read this and you see, oh, I'm a golfer or I'm something else, I can relate to that. And all these different stories of people saying, this book helped me in this way or that way or something. That can allow other people to get on with the possibilities.
Yeah. So, okay, one last thing to do. Jody Lynn knows this is coming. She always gets this every episode. I don't know if this is going to be tough today or easy. It could go either way. But Jody Lynn, when you think back on our conversation today, how do you summarize it? What's the one thing that you grab on that says, wow, this is what ties the whole thing together for
me? I think there's a couple. The first thing is the beautiful reminder of what are you treasuring? And the second is embracing our power to choose. Those things combined can alter the trajectory of your entire life. And as Rand said, take you from surviving to truly thriving in a beautiful life of abundance. And I think that's what we all want. So thank you.
No, thank you. That's a nice summary, Jody Lynn.
You can see why I go to her, because she's really good at that.
I was nervous.
Oh, come on.
No, that one was going to be a
really.
slam
Not
dunk.
really.
No problem at
Not
all.
really.
No problem at all. Well, Rand, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing some of the thoughts from your book. And boy, this is a fun conversation. I mean, it's always an interesting dynamic because when we have a guest on, most often the guests that we have on, we have an affinity for, like we do with you. It becomes a nice, easy conversation. There are the other conversations where there's a little bit of roughness that goes on, there's a little bit of a tension that goes on, and we actually learn more from those because we're learning from a different perspective. But it's nice to have the ability to go back and forth where you have one conversation that goes one way, the other conversation goes the other way. And this is one of those that was just an easy one, and everything just flowed. And it's lovely to have a conversation like that. So thank you for that conversation today, because it just felt good. That's the best kind.
Well, thank you both for having me on as a guest. I've enjoyed it too, and I really hope that your listeners will enjoy it and have some good takeaways and press forward.
Sounds beautiful. All right, so thank you guys very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.